Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. Back before the Reconnection Club had office hours with all questions asked live, I used to host a group phone call where I addressed questions sent in by email. And today I want to share a recording from one of those calls in October of 2019. This is a question that I still get asked today, and my response on that call was essentially the same as what I'd say now. But on the other side of this recording, I'll expand on it a little to make sure it's clear why it's possible to heal your relationship with your estranged adult child even without contact. Here's the recording. What can we do when there is no contact at all? How can we begin the healing process? When there's no contact at all, I would say whether there is or isn't contact, in my view and approach as a therapist and as a step-parent myself, healing always begins with the parent. Healing always begins with the parent. And there are two reasons for this. First of all, unhealed trauma and other types of wounding can in themselves create problems between parents and their children. You know, just as one example, and this is one of many, many possibilities. As an example, a parent who did not get their emotional buckets filled with love and nurturing when they were young, they may look to their children for that. And that can cause resentment in the children, which over time can become estrangement. So that's one example of unhealed wounds in the parent affecting their relationship with their child in a negative way. But there are many ways that can happen, and sometimes they're very, very hard to spot. Number two, the second reason why healing needs to start with the parent is that repairing a troubled relationship, especially with someone whose behavior is maybe not so good and very triggering, takes your very best, strongest self. You've got to be able to choose your behavior and choose appropriate behavior in the face of what might be truly awful behavior from your child. And nobody is up for that unless they're in a pretty good place emotionally. If you're walking around with unhealed emotional wounds, you're not at your best. You can't do the things you could do if you're feeling fragile from a history of painful relationships. So healing begins with you. And I would even say it might be premature to reach out to your child if you're not in a place where you can act like that parent with a capital P that we talk about, at least some of the time. And the parent with a capital P is something you can read about in the guide, and it's also in the Fundamentals of Healing course in our library in the Reconnection Club. So look, if that doesn't sound familiar when I say parent with a capital P, check out that Fundamentals of Healing course in the library or the guide for parents of estranged adult children. But how do you begin this healing process? I think that therapy is a great help in exploring areas for healing, especially if you don't know where to begin. But if you do have a good idea of some of the things that you want to work on, things that have bothered you in different relationships and stuff, in theory, you can do that with supportive peers, friends, your partner, a support group. You can do your own work. You don't ever want to reach out to an estranged child when you're feeling fragile or needy or resentful or anything like that, because it's a recipe for failure. And it could create a vicious circle where you start to believe that you're powerless and there's no point in trying anymore. And you start to think, I've tried everything and nothing works. And you don't want to get into that downward spiral. So that's why the place to start is with your own emotional healing. Bibliotherapy is another way to do that. Reading books about certainly trauma if you've been traumatized or if you suspect that you have, or alcoholism if you grew up in a home where there was alcoholism or other substance use. So maybe just start educating yourself about some of the things that you may have experienced.
In this recording, I mentioned 2 reasons to start repairing the relationship by attending to your own healing. The second one is that it's hard to help someone else heal when you have injuries yourself. You're just not at your best. The other reason was that, in many cases, parents' unhealed emotional wounds are at or near the center of problems between themselves and their children. In my experience, parents are often unaware of how compromised they may be by a personal history of rejection, abandonment, or other emotional hardships. And it's so true what Goethe said, "None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free." If you take it on faith that your healing is the place to start repairing your relationship with your adult child, then you have something to do to work on that relationship, even when there's no contact. But you might wonder how your personal healing is supposed to translate to your relationship with your child or children, and here's what I can tell you. To the extent that something within you has contributed to the problems that led to estrangement, to that extent, your personal healing is the only thing that can remove those particular barriers between the two of you. Your relationship with yourself is as important as it is pervasive. You take an inner conversation with you everywhere, including into your relationship with your adult child or children. That can be a double-edged sword, but the great news is that any positive changes you make in your relationship with yourself, including healing, which is a potent form of change, necessarily changes your relationship with your child or children. You don't have to figure out how. It's automatic. Remember, to the extent that there remains something within you that's still affecting your relationship with your child today, to that extent, your personal healing will heal that relationship too, without any extra steps or effort. As you heal personally over time, you're automatically affecting all your relationships, including estranged ones. And once there's been sufficient healing, then when one of you eventually contacts the other, the change within you will be obvious. The deeper the change, the more this may be true. Your process of healing can become, over time, a welcoming and comfortable house for you to live in and for your child to visit. If your adult child or children have their own work to do, you will inspire them with the deep and genuine changes you've been able to achieve in your healed and still healing relationship with yourself. If you feel inspired by this topic, but aren't sure what your personal healing might look like, you have the option of carving out some quiet time and reading something that helps you discover parts of your emotional landscape that might still need some nurturing. Of course, I recommend one or both of my own books, and I'll link to those in the show notes, but there are many, many roads to healing. Even if you've done a lot of personal work and a lot of healing has already taken place, my books provide different ideas for exploring your relationship with yourself, so you can find those hidden opportunities for further healing or growth. For better or worse, it seems like there's always more to do. Remember episode 194, Room for Improvement? Eventually, you might end up sitting down either again or for the first time with a compassionate local counselor or therapist who can guide you in deepening your connection to yourself further, so that no matter what happens with your adult child from day to day, your relationship with yourself will provide you with a warm, safe, and comfortable home. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.